What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality Podcast. I'm your host. I'm Caitlin Kenna-Smith, and today we're going to get into 3 of the most common mistakes that I see people make when they start a fitness journey, or if they've been on a fitness journey for a long period of time. And a lot of the times, these are the 3 things that hold an individual back from truly accomplishing their goals and being able to sustain the results that they've worked so hard to earn. See, a big theme that we talk about a lot on the podcast whenever we refer to fitness or nutrition and mindset, because it's all included, is that a lot of people, what they do is they take on unsustainable habits and behaviors that then lead to unsustainable results. So think of it like this: sustainable habits and behaviors and actions, sustainable things that you do, lead to sustainable results. Whereas on the flip side, unsustainable habits, unsustainable behaviors, unsustainable actions are going to lead to unsustainable results. Now, both lead to results, but would you rather have to redo the entire process over and over and over and over again? Or would you rather do it once, sustain it for the rest of your life, and truly be able to make this a lifestyle and not just something that you do temporarily whenever you're motivated? Now, the reason why I wanted to do this podcast is because we just came off of doing a Your Sustainable Fat Loss Journey series where we did 8 weeks and we broke down every single week a different topic that, when implemented into your journey, you can sustain fat loss instead of doing what most people do, which is the unsustainable approach. And now, when I refer to unsustainable approach, I want to kind of paint a picture of what that could potentially look like. And obviously, it's going to look different based on the individual or based on what exactly we're talking about. But generally, that would look like you're starting a fitness journey. You think, okay, I'm going to start this diet on Monday. I'm going to just eat less, or I'm going to remove all of the foods that I enjoy. Like, I'm not going to have any sort of cookies. I'm not going to have any sort of, fast food or anything. You just completely eliminate everything that you have eaten up until that point. And you say, okay, I'm only going to eat like chicken and vegetables for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. Maybe not for breakfast, but some people do that. And you just give yourself major restrictions. And maybe you do count calories, or maybe you don't count calories. But if you're counting calories, you generally lean on a lower calorie number than is sustainable. Now, if I were to ask this person who, say, started this diet on Monday, and they started a diet, say, where they cut out everything that is not a whole food source, which is great, to be quite honest, because whole food is the most nutrient dense, and it's what we should be eating as humans. However, the reality of society is that a lot of people are addicted to processed foods, which isn't a good thing. But if you tell somebody, like, you can't have this, and they restrict themselves so much, and then maybe they go down to like 1,200 calories, which is not sustainable. If I were to ask that individual if they could do this for the rest of their life, and if they answered honestly, they probably couldn't say yes. Because let's think about it. Are you going to eat that chicken vegetable meal on your birthday, when you're on vacation, on Christmas, on Thanksgiving? Are you going to go out on the weekends with your friends and bite your lip while they have a glass of wine? Think about it from that perspective, because the only way to sustain results is to do something that you could potentially do for the rest of your life. If you can't do it for the rest of your life, then you need to figure out a different approach. Because maybe in your motivated state right now, where you're saying, I'm super motivated to start this diet, you can say, yes, I will do this as long as it takes. But you're literally gritting your teeth after the first 2 weeks because you want to do anything but what you've been doing so badly. And then eventually you say, fuck it, you crack, you binge eat, you feel extreme guilt. And then it just keeps going in that cycle. And the hardest part about that cycle is that maybe you see results at first, but again, you don't sustain them. You might lose the 50 pounds, but if you lose them too quickly because the process was unsustainable, then you'll gain it back really fucking fast too. And the reason why I wanted to address these 3 common mistakes as well is because I feel like a lot of people right now, with the spring starting, with people on spring break, with summer approaching, we have like less than 90 days until summer. A lot of people right now are thinking about, fuck, my New Year's resolution didn't work when I committed to, getting healthier or losing the weight or gaining muscle. So let's maybe try a different approach this time. Right? Let's try something that is truly sustainable, and let's get rid of these mistakes that you've probably made or are currently making that are going to make this journey a lot easier for you. And now let me preface this. The journey is not easy. However, when you do the sustainable approach, you can actually do it instead of feeling like miserable the majority of the time, because health, fitness, nutrition should improve your life, should improve how you feel physically and emotionally, period, end of story. Are there going to be moments where you really, really, really want to have more food, or you really, really, really don't want to work out? Of course. But that's normal and part of the process. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is motivation. All right? The biggest mistake, and these are in no particular order, okay? I just want to lay them out in the way that I felt made the most sense, but one could be more common than the other, or one could be more detrimental to the journey than the other. But the first one we're starting with is motivation, because motivation is why most people actually start a journey in the first place, because they have that little twinkle of motivation, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later that motivation is gone and they're stuffing their face again. Now, the biggest mistake here with motivation is that people rely too heavily and they lean too heavily on motivation, and even worse, they wait for motivation, which procrastinates the process. And the more you procrastinate the process, the less time you spend in the body, in the life that you want. And the biggest thing to understand about motivation as a whole is that motivation is an emotion. It's a feeling. So just like sadness, anger, happiness, you're not going to have that emotion or that feeling 24/7. For example, you're not going to be happy all of the time. I don't care who you are. There's going to be moments where you're sad or you're angry or you're anxious or you have some sort of other emotion that's taking over. Same thing with sadness and anger. Like, hopefully, unless you're like a completely miserable human, you're not angry all the time and you're not sad all the time. We all have moments where, even if an emotion is the most common that we feel, we all have moments where we don't have that emotion and we feel another one. Now, a lot of people think that we have to wait for this emotion of motivation. Remember, emotions don't last and we can't rely on them. Motivation is not what leads to action. It's actually the exact opposite. And it goes in a cycle like this. It's like a loop. Action leads to motivation, which leads to results. And then you start that loop over. The results lead to more action, which leads to more motivation, which leads to more results. But the reality is nobody is going to be motivated all the time. I don't care who that person is. I don't care what they show you on social media. They're not motivated all the time. I'll use an example of myself. I'm not motivated all of the time. I'm rarely motivated to do the training that I have to do. My training has been ramping up a lot over the last couple weeks as I'm really becoming more serious as an athlete. And I'll be real, like I opened up today's programming that I got sent in my email. I opened it up like 30 minutes ago and I'm very sad because it's going to hurt a lot. But that's the reality of my life because this is a goal that's important to me and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it. So you have to stop waiting for motivation and you have to start committing to your goals and start committing to actually achieving your goals. Because the only way to get to your goals and to get to the life that you want and the body that you want or whatever is to stick to your plan regardless of motivation and to stick to that plan especially when you're not motivated. Because that's how you build discipline. And discipline is the actual way to achieve your goals. You're not going to stay motivated, but you can always do what you say regardless. And that's integrity. That's your word. Integrity is a word, not an emotion. So you can always choose to have integrity to do what's right over what sounds easiest in the moment. So many people wait to wake up and be motivated, and that's just not going to happen. You're not just going to wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm motivated to change now. Usually what happens is that somebody has a moment that is so fucking painful and uncomfortable that they realize that the discomfort of staying the same is greater than the discomfort of making a change. So again, you won't stay motivated, but you can always do what you say regardless of what's happening or regardless of whether you're motivated or not. And that's integrity, and that's your word to yourself, to do what's right over what's easiest. So no matter what, and no matter how small those actions are, always take action. And for the parents out there, here's a good analogy that you can relate this to. If your kid comes home from school and they say, you know what, Mom, I just don't feel like doing my homework today. What are you going to say to them? You're not going to say, oh, that's okay. You're going to say, tough shit, do your homework. Like, do it regardless. That's just how it is. And if you're saying, that's okay, you don't need to do it today, little boy, little Timmy, little whatever the fuck your name is, then maybe you're not the best parent. And maybe you need to take a look in the mirror. And you're not treating your kids the way that they should be, because that's a whole nother conversation. But if you're treating your kids too soft, then they're going to grow up and they're not going to know what to do in the real world. But remember, motivation is a feeling, is an emotion. It's something that's fleeting and is not going to be reliant on. Focus instead on integrity and having integrity for yourself and doing what you can do and doing what you say you're gonna do, regardless of whether you're motivated or not. Hey, if you're motivated, cool. Run with it. Create momentum off of it. But understand that it's not gonna last forever. Now, number 2 is a big one. And number 2 has to do with a little piece of plastic that most of us put on our bathroom floor. And if you're not new here, then you already know how I feel about the scale. But what I see people constantly do when they start a fitness journey is they focus on the scale, they obsess with the scale, and they allow the scale to dictate their habits, their behaviors, and more importantly, their happiness, which is wild if you think about it. But I've been there, and sometimes I find myself there still to this day, because for some reason, we've been taught to allow a piece of plastic, a number, to literally allow us to dictate our worth. Now, if you want to lose weight, obviously the number on the scale is kind of important data to have, because the reality is, if you're overweight, you're unhealthy, and you want to become an optimal weight, one that you feel more comfortable at and that you're more healthy at, then yes, you need to be able to understand that the scale weight must go down. But here's the biggest issue, is that so many people will be doing really, really good with their process, and then the scale fluctuates a little bit, and they say, fuck it, it's not worth it. Or, ooh, let me just restrict, because then the scale will go down again, and then they fall into those unsustainable habits. The biggest thing to understand with the scale is that weight loss will never, ever, 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 never, ever, 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 never be linear. Never. It's not going to be a perfect little slide down to your goals. Never. It's going to look more like you're walking home after a night of heavy drinking, where you're zigging, zagging, you're stalling, you're stumbling, but eventually you get to the destination. And that's the important thing, if you stick with it. Now, what happens is some people don't see the scale moving, so they just quit and they try something new, and they never actually gain enough momentum to earn results. That's the problem. So understand that you can't control your weight all of the time. You can't. There are so many different reasons why the scale isn't going down, or why the scale might even go up, that are not related to fat gain or fat loss. So you can't control the weight on the scale, but what you can control is your consistency towards the process. And that is where all of your focus and quote unquote your obsession should lie, not with a scale. So let's talk about a couple reasons why the scale isn't going down, even when you're consistent to the process. Now, I did an entire episode on the scale and why you shouldn't stress it. However, I'm going to break it down a little bit here. Not going to go too in-depth because you can go listen to the other episode. I'll put it down in the show notes as like a little guide for you guys. Sodium, having more sodium or less sodium than you did the day before. Eating later than you did the night before. Weighing in earlier the morning that you weighed in. Poop. Like, reality, guys. If something's sitting in your intestines, it weighs something. Weightlifting. When you're weightlifting, you're creating micro trauma tears to the muscle, which is going to create a little bit of inflammation. Inflammation creates water retention. It's normal. Stress. And I'm going to talk a little bit about stress. But first, let me finish this. So stress. Ladies, if you're on your menstrual cycle or if you're getting close to your menstrual cycle. And carbs. Now, does that mean carbs make you fat if carbs cause the scale to go up? No. Have you ever, probably not, but you could use a visualization, spilled water and then put a piece of bread on top of that water? That bread is going to absorb the water. Carbs absorb water. So if you're eating more carbs, 1 gram of carb comes about, I think it's 4 to 6 grams of water. So you're just going to hold on to a little bit more water. So none of these things alone cause fat gain. None of them. Eating too many calories causes fat gain. That's the biggest thing for you to remember. But let's get back to the stress. Because so many people think, oh no, I'm gaining fat because I'm stressed. Wrong, you're not. That's not how the fuck it works. Here's what's actually happening when you're stressed. A lot of our habits and behaviors change when we are excessively stressed. And I'm talking physical and emotional stress, okay? So what a lot of people do, you're in 2 camps. You're in one camp where you're stress eating, meaning you're eating more, putting you out of your calorie deficit. You're now in a calorie surplus. You're now gaining body fat. Or some people will eat way less. And obviously that's not going to put you in a calorie surplus. However, other things can happen. When you're stressed, maybe you're not as consistent as you were with your nutrition. Maybe you're not as consistent as you were with your workouts or with movement. Maybe you're not sleeping well. And the reality is cortisol, which is our stress hormone, when it's elevated, it causes water retention. So if you're stressed, you didn't sleep well, you're working too hard, you could just be retaining water. Or you might need to check in with yourself and say, okay, am I actually being disciplined and consistent with the process during this stressful time, or am I letting the little things slip? Sometimes we don't even realize it until we really think about it. The amount of times that people are stressed and they just go for the chocolate, they don't track it, they don't think about it, it just kind of happened. And they think back and they're like, crap, that happened. And when they actually take personal responsibility, then they start realizing, okay, I'm no longer in my calorie deficit. That's why the stress is leading to the fat gain. But stress as a whole doesn't cause fat gain. Different factors and habits and behavior changes can that are associated with stress. And then cortisol, of course, stress hormone, can cause water retention. Can cortisol make it more difficult to lose body fat and gain muscle tissue? Absolutely can. But the majority of people fall into that camp where it's just the habits and behaviors that change when you're stressed. Now, the biggest thing to remember here, like I said before with the stress thing, is that everybody's going to be different, right? Some people are going to stress eat, some people are going to undereat when they're stressed. So everybody is different. So understand that. But here's how you should actually measure your progress, right? Because I told you that the scale isn't the best form of data. It is a form of data, and you should have a neutral relationship with it. You shouldn't get too hype when it goes down. You shouldn't get too sad when it goes up. It's just a piece of data. Treat it as such. Measure progress based on how you feel. Am I more energized? Am I more confident? Am I stronger in the gym? How is my belt down a couple notches? How are my measurements? If your waist circumference is going down, that's a huge indicator that you're losing body fat and earning progress. Are your pictures looking different? The amount of times that I've had clients who are like 2 to 3 pounds different on the scale, up or down, and they look like they've lost 20 pounds because of their photos. Muscle and fat look very different. How is your clothing fitting? Like, pick your favorite outfit and use that as your measurement. See how that outfit starts to fit a little bit differently as you're staying consistent with your process. Mindset. How are you feeling mentally? Are you more positive? Are you more willing to take action? Are you more disciplined? Are you just a better human? How is your relationship with food? Do you still feel extreme guilt if you have one off day? Or are you like, okay, I had that, it happened, moving on? Important things to recognize. And now the third most common mistake that I see people make is rushing the process. So that could fall into the category of fad diets, doing unsustainable approaches, doing quick fixes, or always looking for quick fixes. The reality is fat loss, weight loss, it's not easy. But you don't need to make it as difficult as you're making it. A lot of people think that they need to eliminate all of these foods, all the foods that they love. They have to starve themselves. They have to do these terrible detoxes that make them want to run to the bathroom every 10 minutes. You can 100% lose body fat and enjoy your life at the same time. In fact, that's how it should be because, again, that's sustainable. The not so sexy truth, though, about fat loss and weight loss and this journey is that it's never going to happen as quickly as you'd want it to or as quickly as you think it's going to happen. You will typically feel like you're messing up. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to struggle. But the good news is that that is all normal and everybody experiences it. And the only way to get through is to go through. The only thing here that's going to determine your success is not whether or not you fail, because you will fail, you will mess up, you'll make mistakes. It's part of it. But success here is determined by, okay, I failed, but I got back up and I tried again. That's the difference between people who succeed and earn sustainable results and live a beautiful, healthy life versus people who continue to struggle with their weight and with their health. You fail, you get back up, and you try again. It's sustainable. It's a lifestyle. So I'm going to go back to the question that I asked at the beginning. Whenever you take on some sort of a fitness journey, ask yourself, can I do this for the rest of my life? Like I said, you're going to go off track. You're going to make mistakes. You might have days, weeks, even months where you're struggling a little bit, where you're stumbling, where you're zigzagging. But that's okay. Because as long as you're always willing to get back up and try again and again and again, you're going to be okay. You're going to reach your goals. I promise. You just have to keep getting back up. So I hope that this podcast episode was helpful for you. If it was, please share it with at least one person. I want to continue to spread the mission of the podcast and grow this podcast so that more people can get help and value from it. Now go out today and do one thing that's going to take you one step closer to where you want to be.